Hi everyone, I wanted to go over how I went about making this zine. This is all about Cleo. Cleopatra is my little kitty cat who I love so much. She is 1 year old and she is the light of my life. That's her right there. And so this is a 5" by 5" zine. It has 32 pages in it, so that's 8 sheets of paper folded in half, printed front and back. And it's a pretty chunky boy. And I just wanted to go over my process of printing and assembling these at home. So let's crack into it. Let's start off with the type of printer I use. I've been using an HP Envy Inspire 7955E, which is an inkjet printer, and it works pretty well for what I need it to do. I have HP Instant Ink, which I've heard isn't great, but I don't know, works fine for me. I'm pretty satisfied with the quality this printer's been giving me, and I think it's pretty good for a printer that costs less than $200. I will say, however, it does print pretty slow. Right now I have this video set to like 15 times the regular speed. So this is what the paper looks like once it's out of the printer, and I've got a pretty chunky set of pages here. And if you look on the other side, I have like the very first page with the very last page. And then in here you can see I have my crop lines and my bleed lines. So I'm going to cut at the crop lines, and this is the center line where I want all the folds to be. So I'm going to start by scoring and cutting all the pages. So I'm going to start with the center page, which is this MN. And I'm going to follow the center lines that I made in order to score them. So I'm going to use this bone folder. It has a thinner end to help me score, and I'm going to use this ruler. So I line up the ruler on my fold lines. Just like that. Now I'm going to take the thin end of my bone folder and run it down. And that's going to leave me a really clean line to fold the paper over. And I'm going to use the side of my bone folder to flatten it real nice and tight. That gives me a really clean fold, perfectly where I want it to be in the illustration. And now let's time-lapse this bad boy. So this is part of the cover page, and I actually do this one different. So this is the back side. I want to make sure that it lines up perfectly with the front side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to score it backwards. I'm going to line it up with my center fold. And score it with my bone folder like I have been doing. Perfect. So now you can see on the other side, I can see where that center line is on the other side because it prints slightly off of each other. And now I'm going to grab this. This is a sort of like a mini guillotine. And if you look at this orange one, it has a blade in order to cut the paper, but I don't want to cut the paper right now. So I'm going to replace it with this black one that has sort of like a rounded dull blade. And this is another type of scoring technique. And I use this one for the cover because it leaves a slightly boxier score. So it's a little bit thicker. I like to make sure it slides well before I try creasing the paper. Now I'm going to plug this in. Make sure that the lines line up perfectly top and bottom. And I'm going to score it. I'm going to hold the paper really tight and score the paper as hard as I can. And that leaves it a really nice fold right where I want it to be on the cover. Okay, I'm going to switch the blades back. So I'm going to put the orange one back in there that's sharp. Okay, slides nice and good. And I'm going to start cutting the edges. So I'm going to line it up, make sure it's nice and straight. And snip. Okay, and just to make sure, I'm cutting not at the bleed line, which is the outer line, I'm cutting at the inside line, which is the cut line. So when I make these, I add some extra space, just in case I cut slightly off or the paper's off from each other on the front and the back. That way I have some extra space, just in case. And now I can line it up with the cut and cut it. There we go. Time-lapse time. So before I staple everything together, I just want to flip through and make sure everything is in order. It all looks good. Make sure all the papers are lined up perfectly. This is my stapler. It's a rotating stapler. So it goes like this, boop. And it's perfect for staple binding small things like comics and stuff. It's not as expensive as a long arm stapler. I think this cost me like $7. So I feel like it's a more economic ulterior. Okay, I'm lining it up, making sure all the folds are together, and I'm gonna grab a binder clip. And clip it just to make sure that everything stays in place. Okay, I'm gonna grab another one and clip it there too. Make sure everything is aligned. Okay, and then I look real close. There's my nose. I push down on the stapler and make sure it looks good. And then on the other side, I make sure it's aligned correctly, and again. Okay. And now I've got a little bound book. I take my bone folder again, make sure it's really nice and flat. Perfect. Okay. It's time for the trickiest part. I'm going to clip it with another binder clip just to make sure it all stays nice and flat. And I'm going to line this up on my cutting mat. So here you can see I have it set up by inches. And I want to make sure I have it perfectly lined up with one of the inches so that I know where the 5-inch mark is so that I can cut it. Okay. Right there. So I'm going to line up my ruler and I'm going to score it. So now that I have the score line here, I'm going to fold it just to make sure it's really well defined for me. Now I'm going to grab my X-Acto knife, So this is my X-Acto knife. Make sure you have the blade nice and sharp. You don't want a dull blade for this, or else it's going to be a nightmare. And just start snipping. This is sped up because it's actually really difficult, and the blade kept getting stuck in all the nicks I've made into this ruler. Finally, I just clean it up a little bit, and then you're done! You've got a full-blown little zine. Look at that. If you'd like to support me, you can buy this zine on my Ko-fi. I have other zines as well and stickers. Or you could just drop off a little donation if you'd be so inclined. And if you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe.